Hello there and welcome to Frontiers of Innovation, a LinkedIn Live initiative brought to you by Canon. Now, we are absolutely delighted that you've joined us from around the region and indeed I see around the world. And also to our dearest friends in Lebanon, particularly in Beirut. We're so used to you joining us, and on this occasion, this horrific occasion, we really want to send our united condolences to all of you, to the victims out there, and you're in our thoughts and our prayers. And to all, of course, the great talented filmmakers out there as well. We're here for you. So whatever we can all do, reach out to the world. We need you to know that. I'm Etna Trainer. I'm your host for this series. And of course, this series of Frontiers of Innovation, we've always focused on innovation, creativity, digitalization, and really how it's running our world and the impact that it's having. And today, of course, we're looking at filmmaking in changing times. Now, we want you to be involved as we always do. We want to have your questions. We want to have your comments. And we have three just fabulous filmmakers. Three incredibly talented people joining us today too. So I'm sure you're going to be really interested in what they have to say, their careers, what they've been doing. So make sure you focus in with us, send us your name, tell us where you're calling in from, and we'll get right down to questions as soon as we can. Because we know filmmaking, cinema, all of this, the movies, we're all very, very excited about it. And we intend to stay excited about it and look forward to the great content that these great producers are going to deliver. So three great filmmakers. We have Ahmed Abdallah. We're delighted that Ahmed is joining us, mainly from Cairo and from Egypt, I should say more. Naila Al-Khaja. Naila, delighted to see you, of course, filmmaker, director, producer, and a long list of accolades, and based here in Dubai. We're always delighted to see you. And Faisal Hashmi, thank you so much, the three of you. So what wonderful talent I have here, and I know this is going to be a fabulous conversation. But first of all, if I could maybe ask you all, I think what's on people's minds too, when we started 2020, when we started a new decade in many ways, you know, it's been a bit of a rough start for the world. So Ahmed, talk to me just a little bit about how the pandemic has actually impacted your work and the work that you're so used to doing. What has changed so much?
Well, a lot and nothing at the same time. But first of all, let me thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be in this. I assume it will be a very beautiful conversation. I'm very happy to be with Faisal and Naila. So thank you so much for having us. So, well, for me personally, it has always been like that, believe it or not. I keep joking with my friends saying, well, this is exactly my lifestyle for probably the last 10 years, but suddenly it's becoming more trendy somehow. But I understand at the same time that it's not easy, neither for me or for most of the people around me. Things are changing in different directions, and at the same time, we are standing still. And for me, this is really opening lots of ideas and lots of way to recontemplating about my own work and about what exactly should I be doing next step. So there is a lot to digest at this moment, but yet for me, I think, well, there's a lot to digest, but I have to be doing it with the same old way, or maybe I will have to change my same old way.
Well, yeah, you were open-minded on it, so that's good to know. And I think we're going to be getting ready for a few more months of this. I don't think things are going to change a whole lot, but they are, I know, changing gradually. Naila, you have a tremendous body of work to your credit. And, you know, you're a director, you're a producer, you really have put so much tremendous work in, and I'm probably more familiar with your work being in Dubai and being closer to you. But again, it's been an interesting few months, let's say. How have you actually passed the time in the last few months? Tell us.
Wow. Well, I gave birth to twins.
So you had a totally different production as well, a whole new project as well.
So that's been like elevated my anxiety off the roof. But something that Ahmed said that quite brings home here as well is like someone took our shoulders and just said, stop. You need to pause and think about your life. And we're always on the run. And I think, you know, as it has been absolutely devastating for a lot of people who've lost their lives. A lot of people lost their businesses. You know, from a filmmaker's point of view, this was always my 6 months break to write my screenplay. So it kind of fit that bracket, you know. But then from a mother's point of view, I would have never, ever have asked this kind of break to spend time with them, watching them grow, because I would be on set directing TV commercials, because that's my bread and butter. So in that department, I got hit pretty bad. But then because I already secured funding for my screenplay, so I was already paid to write during the lockdown. So yeah, I know it's just sheer luck that it was this way. But again, I completely understand. And as filmmakers, I think we all have a certain level of empathy for people who their lives have just been flipped upside down.
Indeed. And I think, again, we're seeing that in every industry. So of one industry, I think particularly it's going to be hit. And particularly when we saw the closure of cinemas and people not able to go to the cinema, you know, that's something I think also people are missing. Faisal, talk to me a little bit about the work that you do, because you're more in the thriller genre. And again, you started from a very different perspective as well too. And, you know, talk to me a little bit about how things have been in the last few months, and we'll look a little bit more in detail at the great work that you're doing.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having a session like this. I think, you know, a lot of filmmakers are sort of lost in the, you know, in these current times. So something like this at least let them know that, you know, perspectives of different people and, you know, what kind of boat they're all, you know, we're all kind of the same boat. So for me, I mean, as just to kind of rub off what, you know, Ahmed and Nela said, it's been a time that, you know, for me, I'm always trying to be optimistic about situations like this. You know, I knew obviously this is something out of my control. You know, I can't really do something, you know, to change this. So for me, it's always like, okay, what's the best that I can, you know, make out of a situation like that? So, you know, as Nela said, I just started focusing more on the writing side of things. And in a way, you know, something that I sometimes lack is discipline and like sitting down and actually like writing and having the time for that. Because you always have that excuse of like, oh, you know, I wish I had more time to finish this X screenplay or stuff like that. Well, like I had all the time in the world for the last, you know,
I have
4
to
months.
say,
So it's almost
Faisal,
like,
if I have your Lamborghini engine, because he does, Faisal has a Lamborghini hidden engine in him. I would have done 4 features by now. So hats off, really.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, so it was great that I had the last, I mean, I would say 3-4 months just sitting down and being able to write all the ideas that I had at the back of my head. But it was just like kind of in a little notebook where I just wrote an outline or something like that. So I was able to finish 2 screenplays. I was able to finish a couple of other shorts that I potentially want to explore. So in terms of productivity, you know, I had to just switch gear from obviously not being able to shoot because there were no shoots happening, even in terms of you know, some commercial stuff, things had to cancel, unfortunately. So that was, you know, not great. But then I had to just compensate with like, okay, if I'm home now, what's the most creative thing that I can do, you know, within being home. So on a writing front, it was awesome. And also like, again, just because I was home, I was like, okay, if I have a camera with me, I have stuff with me. So I just started shooting a couple of videos for my YouTube channel, just talking about filmmaking, you know, something that I wanted to do for a while. But again, you know, you always like kind of put it in the back burner. Oh, I'm going to do it sometime when I have more time. So, so just shifting priorities to kind of things that I could, you know, just have been putting, you know, on the back burner. And also, Digital Studio Magazine, I won Filmmaker of the Year, which was kind of interesting. The ceremony.
Yeah, indeed, and big congratulations there too. But when we look at this, I think it also goes to show that even though the brakes are on, creativity never stops. I mean, that's the key thing. And that's where, you know, we look at people like yourselves and we know there's going to be even better content coming on the next round, so to speak. Ahmed, talk to me particularly, you know, about the Egyptian market. I mean, back in the 1970s, and Egypt was almost the center of the region in terms of big movies that are coming out of there. What does the Egyptian market look like at the moment when it comes to films?
Well, the nice thing is that we don't have to speak about Egyptian market or Lebanese market or Gulf market anymore. Now it's really globalization. And when I think of my industry, I cannot think about Saudi filmmakers or Emirati filmmakers as people doing things from a different circle. Actually, it's not this way anymore. And I think this is a very positive thing happening recently, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. So yes, maybe Egypt was the leading ship for some time in cinema history in our region. But in my opinion, now the situation is shifting dramatically, not to or not in favor to other country. Actually, no, the entire region is now starting to form a new kind of cinema related to this specific kind of region. This is how I see it. I think it's still very fresh taste for this new wave, if I would say. but actually I think it is changing in a very positive way, from my opinion. And in the 80s, things were different. People had to go to the theater to see the film. If you don't buy a ticket, you will never be able to see the film, especially if the film is artistic film somehow. And if the film is not very commercial, probably it will not be screened in any TV channel. So right now, of course, things are different. People are able to see all the films. People are able to follow the film to follow films everywhere. So
it makes a big difference. Yeah, and it's very exciting.
Yeah. And it makes a big difference even for us, for us when we start thinking of making films. Okay, this film is not for the people who are buying tickets only. So, yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about the platforms and the distribution in just a minute. But Naila, when we look at the regional film industry and the changes that you've seen since you've been working in this industry too, and just, how much more is it elevated? Obviously, you're making films in the region, but for global distribution as well, as what Ahmed is saying. But there is, I think, a sense in the region too that we're seeing, maybe not a revival, but maybe a whole new world in terms of filmmaking. What do you think?
Definitely. I mean, when we say film, it becomes this Dr. Jekyll and Hyde between film art and film business. It is called show business in the end. So we need to understand this balance, this intricate balance of how can we create more content that can justify, the investments that went into this content. So regionally, I think with the intention of opening up tons of theaters, ironically, it's still cinema, still alive in a way. I think it will come back, but that's another topic. Like KSA is will be the leading, I hope, figure for us, and it will cause a tremor for the rest of the Arab world in terms of bringing something new on the table and opening and having a much bigger slice of cake for everyone to create content. So I feel like Ahmed was right in the sense that there isn't this traditional way of film distribution per se, like it used to be, or the way we watch films. The space of watching film has now become extremely unpredictable, but also very way more open in the sense that we can now the ancillaries have changed. So now you get streaming, whether it's theater, you go theatrical, then you go streaming, and then you have free to air. It is a bit like the older model, but I think because there's way more competition, it has diluted in a sense that now you can actually create something for a niche market and find the distribution vessels that can target that piece of content. But for Arabs and us locally, I personally believe that KSA would be the face of change, so to speak, or that they would create that snowball effect that we all desperately need.
And indeed, when we look at the amount of cinemas that are just going to open there, and I mean the plans that were in place this year, the ones that have opened already. At a conference recently, I met one of the key film studio, sort of our film set builders that were there, and just building cinemas. I think he was almost about to retire in the USA because they're closing them down, and he had orders for hundreds. So he was very excited. Naila, let me stay with you for a moment, because as a filmmaker, is it every filmmakers, and all of you can maybe address this too, do you really want to see your film though on the big screen, or has the mindset shifted and you all just look at the different ways of distribution now and you go with whatever works basically?
I think it's like love, when you meet someone, at the first honeymoon period, you're like gooey eyes and you're like, oh my God, I'm so in love with you. 10 years later, it's comfortable and you could still love that person, but you don't have that intense passion. So if you asked me this 10 years ago, yes, I would be crazy and like so in love with having my film on the big screen, because that was the dream. And I think it's not gone, it's still there. But now, 10 years later, if it's, let's say, on a big streamer, like it's on TV, but on a very famous platform that everyone will have access to, that to me would be, I wouldn't say better, but that would be a fantastic way of saying I'm extremely happy that my film got on this, but never made it to theatrical. I'll be happy with that deal. Absolutely. This would not have
in many ways,
many years ago. So yes, they have, people like the Amazons and the Netflix, they have changed the way things are being perceived, I guess.
And ultimately, I think it's the eyeballs. You've got more people from around the world watching. So I think that's what's exciting. Faisal, talk to me about your start in this, because you never depended, so to speak, on the big screen. That wasn't where you were 10 years ago. You probably weren't even making films 10 years ago, but no, you've been doing this for a while. But talk to me about that journey and how valuable, all of the new platforms have been, particularly for your work.
Sure. I mean, for me, when I started off, I mean, it's been pretty much exactly 10 years now that I started like making short films. So when I started off, again, I never went to film school, so I didn't have that kind of backing for me, and I never really had a lot of resources to make films as well. So for me, it was just like, what's the most kind of low budget short films that I can do? Few characters, few locations, like acted by mostly friends that I knew, and locations that I had to like beg, borrow, from people. So yeah, so it's been a journey ever since. It was just figuring out what I wanted to do, but also within the resources that I had. I didn't want to wait around, for the right funding to come along, because I knew that's just, at least in this industry, at least especially at that time, 10 years ago, there was much less, kind of resources than you might even have today. It was just going to be like a waiting game for life. So it was just like, let's keep making films, and hopefully with every film I'm learning, making mistakes, learning what to do, what not to do. And so it's been challenging myself, trying to kind of expand the scope of things as time goes on. And so I would say, yeah, the last 10 years, I would say 5 years in, I started gravitating more towards horror, thriller, and those kind of genres, because I obviously love them, but I never wanted to tackle them in the beginning, because there is nothing worse than watching a bad horror film or a bad thriller, So I didn't want to be the guy making those kind of films. I needed to kind of understand what I'm capable of before I kind of jumped onto those genres. But yeah, I just love making those films. They naturally, lend themselves towards smaller budget productions. And as you said, like, YouTube and Vimeo were the platforms that I was always looking at. So for me, it was never really about the big screen because of short films. I know that they sort of live online. I mean, you have film festivals, which is great, but then at the end of the day, being online has gotten those films more views than any film festival sort of combined. I mean, some of the films that I have like 200,000 views on YouTube, for example. So that's way more than any film festival I would have, even if I put it into festivals for like, I don't know, 10 years straight. So and just to kind of what Nella said, I mean, again, it's a dream that you want your film, I mean, whenever I do make a feature, for it to be, on the screen, on the big screen. That's kind of how we grew up imagining how film is. But, again, the realities of the world currently, especially when it comes to independent cinema, is that, it's shifting more towards streaming platforms. I would say platforms like Netflix, Amazon and stuff, they're almost like saving indie films, because it would be hard for these kind of films to find the right platform in cinemas. I mean, you would find these to be in cinemas in 2 screens and then removed from cinemas after a week. That's how usually these films go run. I mean, it's very rare to have the kind of breakout success, from an indie style. But when they are on Netflix or on Amazon and these platforms, they are directly there for a large audience to watch, at a click of a button, So
yes,
it's
and that longevity is there too, whereby people can watch them over and over again if need be.
I'm making a film for an audience to watch at the end of the day. That's kind of the reason we make films. So if they prefer watching these kind of films on streaming platforms, then then that's great. That I'm happy to, as long as the audience can access the film easily, without like a 10,000 questions of like, oh, it is worth X amount of tickets and a trip all the way to the cinema. I'm happy to see that. So I'm excited to see where it evolves from here.
Absolutely, and long may that continue to. I mean, there's so many advantages there. Ahmed, talk to me about funding. Where are you getting funding these days, or in general, who do you depend on for funding when you're looking at a film?
Well, this is the most difficult question of them all. So yeah.
Sorry.
well, I try my best to raise the money locally, to raise the money from investors and from producers, and try to do some magic tricks to make the producers believe in the film. So how I used to make films for the last 5 years, actually 5 features. But now again, things are shifting dramatically, because now the demands of the streaming platforms are different. And yes, I have like wider ways of dealing with new platforms, but yet it's making the selection is very narrowed. Or probably I have to be loyal to specific genres to be able to make the films. And what if I don't want to make these films? So it's all affecting how the funding is going to happen. So now it's more complicated, in my opinion. It's unlike the old ways. It's unlike the 2007 when I started making my first film. It was like I have the script and I go to the production company and here's the film. Okay, we agree. No, this is too much. Let's do. But now there are multi aspects happening in the film. So now my current film is my upcoming film is taking place in Berlin. So now for the first time, I am thinking of having different entities to be able to participate in the film. So now we have producers from Europe, producers from Egypt, and producers from the region, the Arab region. So I'm still navigating. I'm still trying to understand.
I can imagine that it's one of the areas, and Nela, exactly, I wanted to come to you, is like investing in film. It's not quite like investing in the stock market. So where do you get investors? What's the big, sort of unique pitch that you can say to an investor, why would I invest in a film? Tell us.
Absolutely. Ahmed said it. I mean, it's all about navigation. You just navigate and you have you smell it. You kind of find these crazy pockets. They're very limited pockets. Everyone's chasing them. And especially through an economic upheaval, like whether it's economic crisis or a pandemic like this one, I think investment in the arts, not just film, but in the arts in general, we get hit so badly. So then the actual physical pain of chasing funding, just, it becomes much, much harder. I did something that I thought I'll give it a shot, and I basically raised money to shoot a trailer the trailer of my feature. So I shot the trailer last year, and I booked a theater, for Walling. I actually booked a theater, invited 200 people. From the 200 people, I got 2 offers to put money in my feature film. From the 2 offers, I accepted 1. And now that person is investing in my feature film, which is, that person won't be the sole equity. It's equity funding, by the way. So it's not none of this, we don't have any government money, not yet. And we've been saying this for years, that we desperately need some sort of, because we don't have treaties with other countries, so we can't access funds, so to speak. But we definitely need some sort of government money. They don't have to be in insane amounts, but something to kind of ignite the process. If they green light, 4 feature films a year here, then we will get to see this kind of movement. This is why I keep saying we don't have an industry yet. We have a mini movement that needs to be pushed and translated into an industry over years. But the government needs to pull their muscles in, and obviously get some of the private films. And I think it will just take one film that will recoup all its money and make a lot of money for the investors here to believe that this could be a sound platform for them to go and play with. I don't think there's anyone in their right mind that would go and throw money on something not knowing if it's going to make money or not. So as I said earlier, it's film business, and whether we love our art or not, it's really, I think, ethical and professional, and it's part of our duty as producers to make sure that our investors know what they're getting into, and we can't just paint it, in beautiful colors and pretend that, oh, you're going to make X amount. But you need to show them the data. We need case studies. We need to show them how this is going to work. And I feel the biggest challenge we have right now is we don't have enough database. At least I'm speaking. I mean, I know Egypt has a huge pedigree and a historic pedigree, and the population that they can actually create that. But for the Khaliji or the Gulf region, we don't have enough feature films to go and say, well, if you invest in this genre, you can expect this. And so we are actually pioneering this. So that's why I bring KSA, because they have the population, and I know that they are going to be greenlighting features soon. So that's going to be a bit of a game changer in the next few years.
And definitely, and I think when we look at particularly the KSA 2030 plan, I think one of the key areas there in the development, and I've talked with our colleagues and friends at the MISC Foundation, the development of culture, of arts, all of that having such a heightened interest. But again, as you say, it's got to have some, real government backing, because I think we look at the big films coming out of the UK, we look at the films, and it's always about, it's the government side that actually invest in there as well as everyone else, and having that behind.
One quick last thing that I really don't want to. I think it's very important. So there are 2 types of triggers. It's either an emotional trigger or a financial trigger. So someone's going to give you money if they feel that your film could have potential, like commercial potential, or their ego is tickled and they felt like, oh, this is something I'm very passionate about and I don't care if it makes money or not. But these are like the, exception to the rule, so to speak. So you got to find the trigger, and as Ahmed said, navigate and find the people that.
And that's what I was just thinking about, because your film investor is, not the investor that's going through, the top footsie companies. I mean, it's a very, very different person, and it's going to have that emotional connectivity. And Faisal, when I look at particularly the genre that you do, a good horror film. I'm not sure if I'm a scary film watcher, but there certainly are plenty of good thrillers out there, without a doubt. Who are you looking at, and where's that investment coming from, and where's the interest when it comes to investment? Because they've got to be looking at this, and they, as Nela's saying too, there's got to be a return on it, or else they're in love with it, one or the other. So
yeah, well, for sure. I mean, the film that Nela was talking about, and are you talking the same screening that I was in, where you held that screening with for your film The Shadow, Nela?
Yes.
That's the one, right? Yeah, that was. So she also made a dramatic horror sort of a film, and it was really fun to watch, and it was a great idea that she made a proof of concept first, and she wanted to make kind of use that to kind of lure more investment, which is, I think, a really smart way of going about. And I think to your question, horror is luckily one of the genres that is financially more rewarding than some of the other ones, only because they are cheaper to make, but they are also the audience around the world is a lot bigger, because I think fear is like a universal thing. So a lot of people are seeking foreign horror films. Versus, like, let's say you would seek out a foreign comedy or something like that. Those have a little bit more limited with cultural kind of like they could be lost in translation and stuff like that. But I think a good horror film, if it gets buzz around the festival circuit, certainly has more distribution options than, let's say, another genre would be. So I think in that sense, it is easier for anybody who wants to make that kind of film. But again, as Nela said, we need sort of a case study, a success story from this region for it to become really easy, so that you can kind of be like, oh, you see that film that made money, and this is another horror film, and so you kind of can point to something as a concrete example of something that actually made money.
Nothing to latch onto. That's the problem, right?
Pretty much, yeah. It's just at this point we're just saying, like, as I'm telling you, how profitable horror could be and stuff like that. But if you don't have an example, it's just a lot harder, and it requires a lot more sort of a trust from the investor to just kind of like pull the plug and go ahead with it. But hopefully Nela's feature film would be the kind of one that we can all use as the examples, when the industry sort of goes forward. But yeah, I think for me, it's been a lot of anytime I've actually had any money to make movies. I mean, I've been self-funding my films a lot, but recently I had a few private investors who who have some money, disposable income to spare, and they like the kind of work that I did in terms of like short films and stuff, and they were like, hey, maybe I'll put in X amount of money. And I was like, great, that's so that much you kind of own. I mean, short films really don't make any money back, so they were not expecting any kind of a huge return. But as you said, like, an emotional trigger is important. So a lot of people are like, oh, that's a cool story, or I want to be attached to something that you're doing. So it's been private investors. And I remember about 7 to 8 years ago, maybe I went to one of those kind of workshops Nela did back in the day, and she suggested the idea of a cinema sort of a tax, almost like a way you take like a dirham from a cinema ticket, and you kind of take that money and sort of put it into a pool where you can finance a certain amount of films every year. And when I listened to it back in the day, I was like, oh, this is going to happen anytime soon. And
I think that'd be a fabulous idea. I mean, I think a lot of people would be interested in it, because people, they want to see more movies. They really, I think genuinely the cinema goers, the people who want to watch this, really have a love of it. And the people who go particularly to the cinema, I think they really, really appreciate that. Ahmad's done a runner. No, he hasn't. You're still with us there. But you were nodding there, in terms of, again, that making that emotional connection in the investor side. And again, people watching too, I think perhaps would be filmmakers too, wondering how they might get a film financed, and where they actually might even get started on that. Where do you find the people who, I suppose it's part and parcel of being in the business for a while, then where to find them. But where do you find the people that sort of have the interest?
In production.
Well, in funding more than anything else. Yes, in production, okay. Of course.
Well, it's still very tricky. And especially related to what Naila was just saying, that in some countries like Egypt, when we have this old heritage of films, we have like 100 years of making films in Egypt. So for new filmmakers and newcomers, this is started to become a burden. This is something that we don't want to bear anymore. If you want to produce your film in a different way, or working with minimum crew, as they call it, or to have a new or strange production design, usually get attacked, because this is not how we work. This is not how we make cinema here for hundreds of years. So no, I remember one time I was trying to play a little with the lighting idea on set, and then the gaffer, he came to me and said, "This is not possible. We are not going to do this." And I said, "Okay, it is working. I like it the way it is." And he said, "No, I am a grandson of an elitist gaffer. He was working in 1940s, and we never did something like that." And for me, we can reflect these ideas and this concept even with the production and with the funding, because if you want to have a film with a fresh idea or something that I wouldn't call it even a fresh idea, but something that people are not used to, or a different method, or a method that they never handled before. For them, this is okay. This is tricky, and they probably would rather go to the safer option, or the option that they would know, even if it's more expensive, or even if it's more common. But yet, I think they would prefer. This is why it makes it harder to navigate, especially if you are coming with fresh ideas, or you're a new filmmaker and making your first film, and this first film will not, or it appears that it will not be similar to anything we've seen in our 100 years of cinema.
Again, and these are restrictions that, again, I would imagine any filmmaker doesn't want to deal with. Nella, talk to me a little bit about the importance of film festivals. I would imagine on a normal year, you might have a few on your calendar, and it's probably another area where you're going to meet some investors and other people like that. But film festivals, you've all won awards around the world. We're missing film festivals this year. I'm sure that there have been a few online, but how important are film festivals for a filmmaker?
I mean, a simple answer would be I found my producer there. So I think obviously networking is really big. So now it's not the same because you can't physically be there, but we're all hoping that this is not, I don't like the word new normal, by the way. It's a temporary situation.
I haven't said it. Did you notice? I haven't even said it.
Thank you so much for not saying it. So I hope that next year, we'll find a solution to COVID and people can slowly get back into the old ways of actually physically going, because we need that human touch, we need the connection, we need to go to festivals. And as I said earlier, networking is key for us. And then not just this, like my other film called Animal, it was given accreditation to the Producers Network in Cannes. And that got me in touch with the distribution companies that were interested in funding something of this nature. So that is also very important, because you can actually attend a lot of these meet and greet sessions where you pitch your film. So a lot of festivals have that, and they have their own market. So it becomes then whether you have a package project and you're missing some fundings or whatever, wherever stage you are at, you basically look at the festival and see what part of the festival suits you. Because the festival is not just screening of films, but it's also, it's where business is made, it's where contacts are made, it's also where talent is discovered. So it has a lot of these multi-layers. So I absolutely don't think we could live without them. I think they're backbone to a cultural voice of the country. They are, filmmakers are ambassadors of their own country at different festivals. So it's just a stunning way of connecting through the art of, and the powerful art of film.
Indeed, and I think everybody hopes they'll come back, just like all of the conference, the exhibition. I think there's a real need for that. And again, as storytellers, you need to be also there in person to be telling your story. Faisal, I know you've been telling a few stories online and connecting with a few people at festivals online. And how have you found that?
Yeah, I mean, as Nella said, I hope that's not the new normal. But one advantage of sort of what's happened, I mean, it's a weird silver lining, but is that a lot of film festivals have sort of been forced to adapt with what's going on. And so a lot of the film festivals have gone kind of virtual in many ways. So South by Southwest, which is a big film festival, they kind of had all their films short film selection at least screened online. So that's for me able to access a bunch of films that the only way to do that would be physically buy a pass and actually go to to Austin, Texas to be able to watch those films. So I think in that way it's great that it's opened up in terms of even like panels and workshops, that a lot of these things which are really, really valuable, they happen online. So even Comic-Con, for example, that was canceled, but they realized to do it at home. And so all these sessions that you would normally see were now accessible to anybody with an internet connection, essentially. So I think in a way that was great to see. But again, as Nella said, what you lose is the kind of human touch of actually after the session is over, going and having a like mingling with people, talking to them about the project. You don't have that. You just it's something that streams and it ends. So I don't think they've figured out to kind of make that a digital experience yet. So it's just more of a passive thing where you're just kind of watching something and maybe interacting with them only during the session. But yeah, I mean, I love film festivals, and I think that is the best way if you want to kind of find people who are, whether they're collaborators or investors. You know, you go to film festivals and you find the people with like-minded sort of interest over there. I wish we had more film festivals in this region. We had Dubai Film Festival and Abu Dhabi Film Festival back in the day, but unfortunately, both of them have sort of vanished. So that is a disappointing sort of step back in some ways. But there have been smaller film festivals. Kind of like that have sort of taken over the mantle a little bit, happening sort of little ones happening year round. So they're sort of keeping the thing going. But I wish maybe the Dubai Film Festival stuff comes back, because for this region, if you're making films in this region, the best way to kind of find financing would hopefully be within this region itself. Would be awesome.
Yes, I can imagine. I'm sure, Nela, you would just love to see those film festivals back there. But, and as you're saying too, I think just keeping the pressure on, I think, and, delivering, good quality films. And as you say, when this region, does, perhaps turn around a big blockbuster, everybody then will come on board. But again, in many ways, I suppose you all hold a responsibility to make sure that that pressure is kept on, because I think it's by showing the government and the people, the bodies, the cultural bodies that are possibly interested in bringing it to their attention that they maybe should be interested more. I think that's probably going to be very important, Nela. I mean, do you think that the filmmakers here are pushing that? And I would hope they are.
It's interesting, because when we had the festival, it would bring us together and we would know what's happening in each other's kind of life, so to speak, right? So now that we're kind of disconnected, the only positive thing I see from it is that people who were really genuinely making films for the actual reason of making film, whether it's the art form, the story, those people will never quit. So you see, like you had a bunch of them who are just doing it for this specific festival, for whatever motive that is. But those who like persevere, like Faisal and Ahmed and many others, they won't care, because the world is so connected now. There's no reason not to make them. And you have thousands of festivals. It's actually just navigating festivals and sending it to the right ones is a technique and a skill set on its own. And it's expensive, right? It also comes down to that. But I definitely want to say that when people make their films, whether it's short or feature films, one trap I've seen us all do is distribution. People don't think of what will happen to the life of this film once it's done. And that's why I think it's really key to bring a producer who understands film packaging and who understands film distribution, because they would guide you to the right kind of platforms once it's done. So I don't know how many people are making those films anymore, because we don't have the festivals to see them, but I'm really hoping that now that they are making them, that they're getting to have some exposure in international festivals. So when I just finished The Shadow, for instance, there wasn't a local festival for me. It was Ras Al Khaimah, I believe, or Al Ain Film Festival. But now I've sent it to around 45 festivals worldwide, and I'm just waiting for results.
And indeed, and that's encouraging too, that I think a lot of the international festivals are looking at here, even Ahmed, as you said. For you, Ahmed, what do you find your best takeaway from any festival?
Well, as Naila said, this is something that had to happen. And it's a key element in our industry. I was lucky enough to participate in the Dubai Film Festival, for example, the last issue. I was in the jury, but the most important thing for me was screening 40 minutes of my film for the first time ever. I see audience reacted to the film in both positive and negative ways. This is something we are missing now. This is something, and especially if will be just making films by writing the script and give it to script doctors and send it to the streamers. And this is we are missing the festival, or if you're taking away the festival element, there is a big part is missing. People who were commenting on the film and telling me things about the film, and I'm still in the editing process, and I can go and work back on that. This is, for me, something was very crucial. And I think it's crucial for any filmmakers to just hear the opinion of any filmmaker. Right now,
The media
just
plays
four
a
of
huge
us.
role in the festival's life, Ahmed, right? If you have a film, they love it, the media would publish it, it will be all over, whether it's social media or traditional media, and you collect all that data, and then that can be your backbone to be part of your, pitch, to tell future investors, look, there's a crazy interest in this topic or whatever that may be.
And it creates that buzz around the
film,
as well.
Yeah, and just to kind of talk about what Ahmed said, like one advantage of having a big screen, the experience, or even a festival experience, is the opinion that you get from people when you watch it. Like there is no substitute for watching a film with a live audience, especially when it comes to a genre film. When you're making a horror film or a thriller, seeing the people react at the moments that you were hoping that they react in a certain way on, it completely lets you know in the room itself. You don't even have to talk to people. You can just know from the room whether your film works or it doesn't work. If people are kind of on the edge of the seat, if they're talking, if they're laughing at parts they're not supposed to be laughing, something is wrong. So I think so many times it's happened where as I've watched a film with the audience, just within the room, I feel like, oh, this is running too long. Oh, and I've gone back and re-edited the film and just kind of made some little trims, and just because of I can feel the air within the audience and whether they kind of I'm losing the interest at a certain point in the film because I feel like it's dragging or not. So I think there's definitely a lot of advantages to that, like having a live screening, getting an audience who doesn't know anything about the film. Usually when they're watching a film festival, they haven't seen the film before. They're just watching a kind of a lineup of short films. So it's just like anything can show up. So that's the right audience to kind of see like whether they dig your film, they don't. Maybe you can speak to some of them later. So that's missing, unfortunately, in this experience that we have. And if your film goes straight to streaming, that's an experience you miss because it's just kind of a void. I can't go to everyone's house to find out how they're and just watch them watch my movie, unfortunately. So
indeed, I love that, Faisal. Yeah, just what you're talking about there. And I just thought of a great name for a bad horror film, The New Normal. What do you think, Leila?
Yeah, that would be more terrifying than anything I've seen this year. Yeah.
Great, Faisal can direct, I can produce, Ahmed can act in it.
Talk to me. I mean, you're all storytellers, Leila, and while you've got your big feature film coming up, and they're big projects, but on a day-to-day level too, you have to tell stories and you have to make a living. And often, we look at the great stories that unfold sometimes in front of our eyes in terms of commercials and television commercials and that. So talk to me about the components and the different thinking perhaps that go into making, a corporate film or perhaps a television commercial or something like that, because there's tremendous storytelling in that too. And it's not about just hiring two guys with a camera and a few lights. I mean, it needs creativity.
If there's one thing I don't regret is actually starting doing TV commercials at 18 years ago, and I've been criticized for it, and I'm thinking, no, it is still the best teaching ground, because you are making content in a very short amount of time with the toughest clients on earth, because then you have the ad agency, you have a client as big as, like, let's say Coca-Cola, and then you have the production house, and then you're the director. So you have lots of different personalities to go through, and you have tension and pressure and big budgets. I mean, some of these budgets were the budgets of full feature films. We're looking at $1 million commercial. So to be on set directing for such brands, that's just absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't say no to that. You're kidding me? And sometimes some of these projects you make in 3 days what you'll make in 30 days of shooting a feature. I mean, if I just wanted to, if it's just for the money, I'll just stick to TVCs, because that's where the money is, and it's quick and nice and sexy and all that stuff and all that jazz. But I am a storyteller. I burn to make films. I love it. That's what I want to do. And I try to do them both. So when I want to survive and I don't want to be the struggling artist, I refuse to be a struggling artist. I want to have that, a luxurious life where I'm comfortable, but at the same time, I'm able to give my kids and my household a very comfortable environment. I also want to be able to tell those stories from my people and kind of have the world experience and have access to a local house and all these wonderful mythical stories from our past. I have had a very tough childhood, so I think I paid my dues where it comes to suffering, but that's another topic. But when it comes to telling stories, I think it's wonderful to do commercial work, because today, for example, at 6 p.m. UAE time, one of my projects will be aired live, and I'm very proud of it because it's not just commercial, it's very edgy and it's very daring, and it's showing all these students who are actually not going to be physically graduating, and we are applauding their time of graduation in the midst of COVID, where they're going to go out and they don't know if finding jobs is even an option nowadays. So there are a lot of uncertainty. So we had to create a film that captured that madness, the kaleidoscope of emotions. And I was able to take that and put some of my narrative filmmaking soul into it, and create not just a commercial for the sake of commercial, but a storytelling form in that piece of work. So I look at it and I see it is a piece of art. Not every TVC is like that, because a lot of them are ready boards and you just have to execute them. But with this client, I was able to create the content myself, which is rare but very exciting.
And of course, that is with the Zayed University. And I've seen some of the tremendous work that you've done with my good friends at Boomtown Productions, and some really fabulous work that you've done with other organizations in that too. But again, when you look at the ad agencies and you look at the key people there, what would you say to them in terms of hiring probably a proper filmmaker to do this, rather than just slapping together a quick commercial? I mean, we can probably see the outcome, but where would be your big selling point on that?
My selling point always comes in that my added value is that I have experience with cast. So like I'm an actor's director, and a lot of these commercials, the actors are quite stiff. They're very plastic. They're most of them are like taken from modeling agencies. So they lack that type of finesse. So it's not just black and white. It's like lots of areas and tones and nuances. So I like to add value when it comes to cast, and as well as create stories, like writing stories to enhance the story that was given to me. So that's the added value of a traditional filmmaker merging hands with a commercial world, as opposed to a purely TV commercial director. They're good, but what I feel they lack the soulful experience of cinema directors who understand the negative space, the mise-en-scene. They understand how actors break the frame and come out of the frame. That's a whole different language that we bring on set, which other traditional TVC directors most cannot. I'm not saying all of them, some of them are absolutely brilliant, but a lot of them lack this. That's why a lot of the Gulf commercials you see the same faces. They don't do street casting, and you see the same old kind of cardboard cut model, which gets very tiring after a while.
And you're right, you miss that big holistic, wow out of it there, and you miss the storytelling element. Faisal, you do some commercial work as well too. And again, it's got to be so important for all of you filmmakers, because it's got to be, bread and butter stuff, and it's essential. But again, it's bringing your art to the commercialization side of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think the best way that I've found to sort of be able to have the time that I'm to devote to my filmmaking endeavors is to be able to sort of commercialize it as well, and do the same kind of work for other brands. As Nella said, like, we are storytellers, so of course my priority is to tell the stories that I want to tell, but what we can also do is tell stories of other brands, of what they want, and just kind of bring what's the best version of it that I can make out for somebody else. And obviously Nella's been doing more on the TVC side, and I sort of do some more a little bit more smaller stuff, so more social media driven kind of commercial work. But I've found a lot of experience, and as Nella says, the experience of working with that hierarchy of the agency, the production company, and then the client, and just kind of the notes going up and down. I think it's the best kind of experience of a war zone of a feature film or a studio film, really, because that's what you would have. You would have multiple producers, you would have a studio, you would have the money people. So it's kind of like giving you that great experience of like dealing with multiple people and sort of getting your voice across, even when there's disagreements within what direction of the thing should take, and like kind of convincing them that your take on it is the right thing, or even in the editing process, like, oh no, this is how it should be. So those battles sort of, I think, are really beneficial and hopefully useful when it comes to a time that I'm working with a bigger studio that has a lot more experience in these kind of things than I do. So I think it's been really useful, and it's also allowed me to kind of invest in more kind of equipment and gear, because a lot of the stuff that I do is I also shoot it myself. So it allows me to invest in that, because it's not just for films, which I know so far is more of a passion thing, but also I know that I can sort of use that to kind of make money back, whether it's buying Canon cameras or buying lighting and buying all of these things. So I think it's a great way to sort of have, to monetize the skills that you're anyway working on, and just taking those experiences, and it helps you back in your filmmaking endeavors as well.
And Ahmad, when we look at, I think the role that, video is playing now in everybody's lives, and be it, that we're seeing it just on, the small format on our mobiles, but we're seeing it, not just on television, not just in advertising and all of that. But I think corporates really need to be telling a better story about the great work they're doing. And we're beginning to see so much more of that. Do you see as a filmmaker a lot of added value that you can bring to this as well?
Well, on a personal level, no, not me, because I couldn't find myself in the commercial side at all.
It's not for everybody, yes.
Yeah, definitely. I know there is a lot of great talents are working out there. I only made one project, and in this project, I insisted that in this project we cannot make any calls for action. I don't want to tell people to go and buy product. This is something I couldn't handle. So I just made it as a song, and they agreed to make it as a song, and it was a huge success. But this, as Naila said, such projects are very rare, and you don't find them every day. So I prefer to just stick to what I know better, which making films, yeah. So, and actually I found it a little challenging that I can actually make a living out of making films. Not only trying to make commercial or trying to make TV series. So I'm not against any of them, but I still find it a challenge to try to make films this way. Corporates will always find people to tell their stories. And usually they tell it in a great way sometimes if you have a open-minded client, of course. But currently my main problem with the advertising is how to say it, is converting the style of how people are receiving videos and films and everything. Now there is a look, and sometimes there is a global look for the TV commercial. Maybe Naila can tell us a little, or I would love to know her opinion, of course. So there is a new global ways of producing the new image of commercial, and this image is affecting how films are being produced. So the wave or the new style of making commercial is now sometimes filmmakers are forced to use this style. If I'm making any sense, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I think it's a very dynamic and a fluid industry at the minute, and I wish we had a lot more time to actually go into it. But there's one area I want to engage you all in, and we've only got about 7 minutes left in the entire program here at the moment. But I know a lot of people who watch, are eager younger people who are in the industry and who want to get involved in the industry. And this is just something I'd like to, engage all of you at. Nella, talk to me when and I'm sure I know you talk to a lot of the universities and the schools and people here too, and you're very generous with your time as well. But when you look at, film as a career and perhaps young people looking at doing this, what's the advice that you would give to people looking at this?
Internship and volunteering. I still do it till today. I mean, if today I get a call from a producer, a well-respected producer I know in France, and he says, look, I have this director, he has 5 feature films and his work is, incredible. Would you come? And I would actually buy a ticket. Well, not today, but in another
With 2
world.
babies under your arms, yes.
Exactly. I would actually run and go on set and watch that person work. So I would say volunteering on set. You will also understand what you like most. You'll be amazed. I know someone who thought that they wanted to do film directing, but after volunteering on set, they're like, wait a minute, I really love art direction. So you will see the tons of different departments on film, and you will know if this is even for you or not, So the more you volunteer, the more you intern, you'll acquire new skills, and you'll know where to then kind of focus. Then you'll kind of create that line of focus and get into it, because not everyone will be able to afford going to university and finding that out. So in our career, it's one of those few rare careers where you're able to actually kind of break through on set. You need to be there with the people doing what they're doing best and understanding what works for you. So that's my number one advice, is volunteer.
Faisal, now you didn't go to university, as you said, for this, and you were self-taught. So when you look around at, the people who are interested in this today and people who want to get into it, what do you say to them?
I mean, the one thing I would say to them is that there is no better time to be a filmmaker than the current time that we live in. I mean, the barrier to entry has completely been demolished in many ways, at least in terms of being able to create a film. I mean, our phones can now shoot better video than film cameras could probably 15, 20 years ago, right? Like, so the
well, apart from good Canon films, it's like we
yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, even in terms of, like, since you brought up Canon, like the fact that small DSLRs, they pretty much pioneered that, like small DSLRs that anybody could kind of sort of afford can shoot filmic images, like stuff that you would have to spend like $30,000-$40,000 to basically buy a camera that was able to do that, and probably have film rolls and stuff like that. You can now just buy a consumer level camera and be able to do that. So I think the amount of excuses that people had for not, and they were valid excuses, but like the amount of excuses people had of like the gatekeepers and the barrier to entry is now gone. And now I think it's become a more democratic process of, now it's like, okay, now it's about the story, right? What's the story that you can tell? Because the best story is going to win out. Now, gear doesn't matter as much. You can put your stuff on YouTube, you can put your stuff on Vimeo, you can apply to film festivals all online. So it's just become a lot more easier. So I think I would just say to people is that kind of do what I did. I wish if I was born today, I would be making twice the amount of short films that I was making, when I started off 10 years ago. Is just experiment, shoot stuff, shoot stuff over the weekends with your friends. If you don't have access to actors, just get better, understand what kind of films you like, what kind of films you don't like, and just learn from that experience. And just put your stuff out there. Let 95% of the kind of contacts that I've gotten in the industry and people that I've worked with is because I put my stuff out there instead of just keeping it in film festival and having it disappear. So if you don't have the contacts, put yourself out there. People, like-minded people, will see your stuff. They will get in touch with you. It might take some time. You might get better as it goes on, but
But as you're saying, you got to take the risk, and you've got to actually put it out there.
You have to. You have to
hear from Ahmed. Yeah, Ahmed, talk to me again. Just a few words of inspiration there for people interested in getting in this, and we've really got 2 minutes left on this.
Well, I wouldn't agree more with Faisal. Actually, everything he said, I totally agree with. Now everyone can be a filmmaker. Now with the devices in our pocket and our laptop, we have everything any filmmaker would dream of like 20 years ago. So now the only question is the ideas, what we want to tell, what we want to share with the world. So I think people shouldn't try to communicate with the industry or penetrate the industry. Just make your own film. It doesn't even have to be a film. Make it a song, make it an abstract art, make it anything. You will learn, as also Naila said, you will learn and you will find your place in the industry. And the best advice is stop listening to advice, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Naila, I'm going to give you one last word here because you've got your big promotion coming up tonight for the Zayed University. Tell us a little bit when that is, and I'm sure you're very hopeful for the future of cinema. I'll give you the last word in 30 seconds.
Great. I hope people can watch at 6 p.m. today UAE timing on Abu Dhabi TV. And I do wish Ahmed and Faisal and myself to create, feature films that are authentic and that can reflect the truth, our truth, and we'll be able to see a different type of Middle East or MENA region for the outside world. I really think there's tons of stories here that aren't untold, and we just can't wait to tell them.
And I think we have 3 great examples of 3 super talented content creators, filmmakers. It's been an absolute joy for me to have the time to talk to you. Naila, Faisal, and Ahmed, thank you so much
for arranging it. Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you
And
so
from all of us here at Canon, from the entire production team for Frontiers of Innovation, we want to thank you for joining us. We hope you found this inspirational, and we hope you found it very, very useful. Now, of course, we'll continue to bring you more dynamic content, and we're going to be with you next week, next Wednesday, and it is World Youth Day. So guess what our topic is going to be next Wednesday at 2 o'clock Dubai time. We're going to be talking to some real innovative, creative movers and shakers, young people who are doing exceptional jobs and really inspiring us all out there. So we're really looking forward to it. So be sure to tune in next Wednesday. And once again, thank you all so much for joining us. And to my dear guests, thank you for being with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.